Hi, welcome to my third video in the series of webMethods integration server. So yesterday we talked about fully qualified name and how we actually uh, refer to the fully qualified name and how do services collide and folders not collide. So we saw all those things yesterday. So in integration server, basically, if you have any component other than these folders, any other component, if you have those things definitely collide. So it's not only the flow services I'm going to create here, it will be any other component in this list. If I try to create it in the same name, it won't create. So for example, here I'm going to create a document type, which is like telling doc mapper. It's going to say namespace. It doesn't matter if it is a flow service or Java service component, or if it is a document type or different elements that is in the list. If it is going to come and clash on this namespace, we cannot use that, right? So that's one important thing to know about. Along with this, I also want to talk about collaborative development environment, how Eclipse provides that. So when you are as a user, when you log in a designer as a developer, you are having a flow service, and in order to work on it, you will log for edit, right? So let me show you in a different server where we have multiple users working on it. So I have different user lock different services. If you see, this is like a red lock, and here the service which I lock, which is in green. So I go here and see lock properties. I see owner is administrator because I have actually logged in as administrator, right? It will tell what is the time it got locked and everything. And in this one, I go and do the same thing, lock properties. It will tell what's the name of the user and what date they locked the service. So if I have administrative access in this server, I can actually click this service and I can actually say unlock, and then I can lock this service. Once I lock, it will come on my name. This is the way we work on like a shared environment. We just need to ask the other developer, as long as if you have administrator rights or full rights, you can actually unlock any other user's service. If you have only developer rights, you have to actually ask the user to unlock, right? So if you are all working in a dev as full administrator, it's always best to ask the other user before you working on it, right? Let me unlock. I have to tell them that I locked and unlocked, did not make any changes to the services, right? So these are some basic things we know about the elements. So now I'm going to start a little bit on service development, where I'm going to talk about these different flow steps in service development. The very first step we are going to talk is called invoke step, right? Invoke step is nothing but we are going to invoke some of the inbuilt services in webMethod, right? In order to utilize the functionality of the inbuilt services. So for example, in my service called first flow, let me log for edit, and I go in here and I go and say flow. Anything that starts with WM is all the method services, right? So now in this one, WM public, I go to this flow and I'm going to invoke a service called debug log. I'm going to see what this is going to do. Trying to drag and drop. I did not even open this service. Okay, fine. Let me drag and drop this debug log. Fine. So now as soon as I drag and drop, I see these four things on the pipeline. So this is my service. Whatever input and output for this function is shown here, right? So for example, if I want to literally explain this in the terms of any other Java service function, you have a function 3 which you are trying to invoke, and this function is actually written in such a way it has two inputs, right? For example, these two inputs are A and B. So when we are calling here, we need to pass those through input A and B, right? Inside this, when we are calling this function, right? So same in this case, we are calling this function or this service called debug log. It can accept 3 parameters, right? And in this, there is something called variable concept here. You see all the types of variables. So the first one is string. You can use string and you can actually change the property of the string here to be an integer, right? So what kind of variable it is? It is an integer. You can change it. So right now when it says ABC here, it is always a string. And when you see a small kind of a square on the top, that means it is an option, right? So when I click at this, you will see the record is false. If the record is true, it means it's not optional, then you won't see the small box there. So all these values are optional here. So I am checking my first built-in service. This is my message to the server. And I'm going to check you can also, when you're putting value, so you have to actually get set value and you go here and set the value here. In the function, in this box, you can either type it right here directly or you can go to these 3 dots, click and open this, right? You actually go here and I'm going to tell test service starts, right? And I'm going to say all these things. So now I have 2 values here and I'm going to save this service. So now I actually have a service which is called first flow and I used only one step in that service, which is actually an invoke step, and that invoke steps has 3 optional values that I can use. The way I can use values on this is you can right click set value. This is like directly assigning input to that input parameters in the value. So you see, if you have anything available in the pipeline, you can actually map the value and show that example shortly. Since I don't have anything here, I just go and right click and I set my value bus, right? So now I have to execute this service and see if it is working or not, right? So now I right click this service and I say run as flow service. And I say okay, and I get 2 outputs here. Okay, what do I see? Whatever I set is coming out, what that means. So this service basically writes log in the integration server, right? So I have to go and see in the integration server. I can actually go to the browser and check here directly, or I can actually run in browser, and it will open the browser and it will ask for username and password. Since I have administrator access to my local, I can see this, right? So now this is the way the service runs. Now I actually can go to the integration server from here itself. I go to the logs and I see in the server here. You see, I have the log here. Check my first built-in service. But more fun. I want to check what is the third variable here, which is level. So integration server uses the logging call log4j logging, right? The logging service uses something called log4j, which is a Java general concept for logging, and there are different levels of logging. What if it is an error? I have the level as error, right? And if it is just information, you just tell it it's info. If you wanted to do it as a debug, you say debug. Trace. There are different levels, and if you want to set warnings, right? There are several levels. These are different levels that you can set. So now if I go in here, sorry, my window I lost. Okay. I go in here and I go back here and see this level here. The default, if you don't put anything, it will go to info. Now I'm going to tell error. And I say save, and I'm going to run. Let's see what happens. Now I get this. I'm going here and I'm going to see, do I see any difference? I'm seeing the same here, because in this log I'm not seeing if it is error level or not. But if I go to the basically the log file in the file status. I'm going to see the file system here. So this is a nice time to show the file system. So I have actually installed the software integration server in this folder called software AG. This is where all my components are installed. So inside the integration server folder, if I go to my instances and I go to default logs, this is where all my logs are here. So I'm going to open my server log, which is this one, and I open it in the notepad. Okay, so now I'm going to check the last part here. You see, this is the whatever I put in here is coming in here, right? The test service starts checking my first filtering service. So usually you won't normally have access to this logging level here in the operating system level logs. You cannot go and see, but if you're having it in your own machine, you can actually check. If you don't have access to the server, you still can access log if you have access to the IS, right? So this is one thing called invoke step. Now I wanted to invoke one more step and try practicing it. Let me go here and say pop, and I go here. This is the famous step everybody first start, add int, right? And here I have value to add two integers, right? So now that's another concept. See, I already have these value already put in there. I'm going to just delete this level because this is not an error, and I save it here. So these values, I really don't need it in the next step. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to drop these values. Well, how I drop is I select this and I can click this button here and drop it. This is one way. Or I select this, right click and drop it, right? Two ways. And I save my changes, right? And now in this step, I have two numbers. So either I can actually always add the same numbers what I'm going to put here, or I can ask the user to give me the numbers, right? So this is called in the tree tab where you actually write your program, in the pipeline tab where you actually manipulate your variables, and there is another tab called input and output. This is where you can get your input and output for your service and set output. So I'm going to drag and drop this variable called string. We'll go through this variable. We have string list. String is like a single variable. You can actually use this property, like let me say, if I say a as first value, and if I go here and check the content type, I can make it as a integer. So for example, I say integer. Once I put it as an integer, I see here I put a constraint here. So normally in this case we don't want to put this constraint. I just wanted to show you that. So now I put no constraint specified and I save changes. I have A and B. I have two values and I am going to output C here, right? I save it. So this is the two inputs I'm expecting, and I'm going to output in the variable called C. So now I see this A and B in my pipeline. So I'm going to map, okay, the first value which I'm going to add is A, the second value which I'm going to add is B, and output value I'm going to map it to C, right? So we can also move this information like up and down here. We have this up arrow, it's not enabled now. Let me save it to get this enabled. So now I don't want this num1 and num2. I want to drop it. Drop this, right? I don't want this. And I don't want the A and B also, which is coming in the pipe because I already used them. And now this value also, right? So now, when I execute this service again, run first flow, I put 1 and 2, and I have the output C as 3, right? So So my addition service is working. So I want to add a debug log below this add-ins to put the added value. I can actually copy this service and I can paste it here. Okay. In this case, I have the same input here, checking my first built-in service. And I'm going to, instead of doing that, I'm going to remove this and map this C to this value. And in the function, I say this service ends. Okay. Once I do this, I say OK, and save it. And now I run it again. So I still have my output. Now let me see what happened to this server. Right? So it says the service starts taking my first built-in service and it gives the output here. So this is one simple service I wrote, and I used only one step called invoke step. In that I used two different inbuilt services to write this complete flow, right? And we run this service by right clicking and run service. Okay? So these are the things we saw today. Check soon for more videos.